Welcome everyone to the Holy Sparks podcast. Saul K here. Super excited and grateful for yet another edition, and I'm very honored to have my guest here. And without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce and edify the man properly. Hillel Fuld, named Israel's top marketer and the man transforming startup nation to scale-up nation by Forbes, is a tech journalist, startup marketer, and technology expert. Hillel works with technology companies and accompanies them from idea to revenue. He also works with many leading tech brands as an influencer. These include Google, Oracle, and many more. Hillel's work has been featured in CNBC, Inc. Magazine, Fast Company, Entrepreneur Magazine, TechCrunch, The Next Web, and many other leading tech publications. Hillel was recently named the 7th most influential tech blogger on the internet and among the top 100 most influential social media personalities across the globe. In addition to Hillel's work with startups and multinationals, his writings and his online activity, Hillel also speaks publicly on various topics, including marketing, entrepreneurship, Israeli tech, and his personal story and business philosophy. What Hillel is most proud of is his family, including his wife, Rachele, and his 5 amazing kids. He also takes pride that he used his extensive network to help hundreds of people get jobs in the Israeli tech ecosystem. Hillel, welcome to the Holy Sparks podcast.
Man, I should pay you for PR with that intro.
You know, it's easy to sound good when you've done good. So
Thank you. That's nice.
thank you so much for being with us. I really appreciate your time. I know you're super busy. And so to allow people to get to know you a little bit, tell us a little bit about growing up Orthodox in New York with your father as a rabbi.
Yeah, so my father, both my parents, I should say, are visionaries in the Jewish education world. My father is best known for being one of the first principals of SAR Academy. He was invited to the White House, top 3 schools in America. You know, a crazy percentage of graduates from SAR elementary school end up going to Ivy League, which I should say is something that used to be a lot more respectable than it is now. I went there for elementary school, and then when we moved to Israel, they actually opened up a high school, and it's just a really fascinating school from a philosophical perspective. There's actually no walls in the school. There's an external structure, but there are no walls. And the concept basically is that when you teach kids that they can concentrate despite background noise, they learn and they grow up to be healthy. Whereas if you teach them they need absolute silence to concentrate, that's where ADHD develops. So it was a crazy concept, a revolutionary concept, and the proof is in the pudding. It did extremely well. So yeah, my father's an Orthodox rabbi. But, you know, I think most people would probably envision an Orthodox rabbi as this like super strict, where my dad's chill. He's like a chill guy. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you said, I grew up in New York, moved to Israel when I was 15, 30 years ago, and never looked back.
Okay, so just real quick for people that missed that, what does SIR stand for? What does the school stand for?
Salanter Akiva Riverdale.
Okay, great. Did you ever consider becoming a rabbi yourself, growing up in that environment?
Interesting. No one's ever asked me that question, actually. I know the answer is no. I never thought about that. But you know, I am deeply, I should say, the Torah is deeply embedded in me and in my work and everything that I do in life. So I feel very strongly connected to my tradition and heritage. I just don't think I ever felt the need to actually get the title of rabbi.
Got it. Okay, so now your family made Aliyah during sounds like the middle of your high school years
Right.
or right before. So,
Yeah.
so tell us about why then and how was that experience for you?
So I came here when I was in the 10th grade. So 9th grade, I was in New York, and 10th grade, I was in Jerusalem. Why that is? Really just a technical reason. My dad had a sabbatical year when I was in 6th grade, and we came to Israel for the year and really fell in love. And the contract was that he has to be back at SAR for 3 years. And like 3 years on a day, we were on a plane. And, you know, the truth is, I'm one of 5 brothers, and somebody's gonna have to make the sacrifice, right? So that was me. And it's not an easy age by any means to move to Israel, but 30 years later now, I can tell you it's the best thing that ever happened to me by far.
I love it. Yeah, we have that aspiration as well. So, real quick, did you serve in the IDF also after high school, considering when you got to
I,
Israel?
I did. Yes. I went to yeshiva, and then I was in the artillery brigade in the IDF.
Okay, just a little bit about that experience for you. Tell us how that shaped you and your connection to the land and the people.
Well, what I'm supposed to say is it was such a, meaningful experience. But if I'm being totally honest, not the case. You have to understand, people in Israel are born and grow up with the concept of when you're 18, you're going to the army. I had moved to Israel 2.5 years before, so I had no time to get used to that concept, let alone to deal with the culture shock between the way Israelis conduct themselves in America. And so I didn't have a very positive experience in the IDF. I can speculate from a psychological perspective why that is. It's probably the lack of a structure. It's probably the challenges that I have with authority. Definitely the culture shock. A lot of reasons, but I cannot say I enjoyed my IDF service too much.
Yeah, it makes sense because you didn't grow up with that as this, aspirational nature that all your friends were doing and in the culture. And so that's why I asked that question. So
Yeah.
thanks for your answer. So let's fast forward a little bit now to what is the work that you're doing, and then we're going to get to your activism.
So about 17, 18 years ago, I found myself at my first job out of college with a degree in political science. Unclear to me what I'm supposed to do with my life. And I found myself at this tech company writing user guides, which, as you can imagine, is not the optimal career choice for someone with ADHD. And I'm literally just bored out of my mind. I just start writing on the internet. I just said, I love tech. I love writing. I'll start writing on the internet. And I don't think the word blog existed, or if it did, it definitely wasn't mainstream, and definitely wasn't a business model, And I just, again, I had deep passion for technology and for writing, started writing, and entrepreneurs pretty quickly started to reach out to me, and they'd say, I read your article, I'd love to meet you. And I'd meet them, not unclear to me why the CEO wants to meet me, a random dude writing on a keyboard, but sure, I'll play along. And so I'd meet these guys, and I quickly understood that there's a fascinating phenomenon when it comes to Israeli technology, and that is that these people are the smartest brains in the world when it comes to building tech, but when it comes to building businesses, not so much. And so I would ask them to pitch me what they're doing, and they would talk to me about their algorithms, and I'd say, dude, what do you do? Like, stop with your, I don't care what you built. What do you do? No clue. And then who are your competitors? We have none. What's your go to market? An article on what I was like, dude, are you serious right now? So I would help these guys. There was no money involved. I had a job. And over the last 15 years, tens of entrepreneurs poured into my inbox and said, listen, you helped us back then. Today we're big. Let's work together. And so I built myself an amusement park. Basically, I was a kid in a candy store every day, meeting the most remarkable people in the world, loving it. It was great. And thank God I built a successful company and worked with some unbelievably fascinating people. And then October 7th happened, and that all changed.
Interesting. How did that affect your tech work in terms of
It
or
ended my tech work. I shut my business down on October 8th. It wasn't a question in my mind. It was clear to me what I needed to do. Since then, I've been doing advocacy 24/6, right? I'm offline on the Sabbath, but my posts on social media since October 7th have reached 1.1 billion impressions, which is bananas. And I'm very, very hyper focused on my mission, which is to provide real-time accurate information about the war. So generally, real-time and accurate are two mutually exclusive things, because if it's real-time, you can't verify that it's accurate. And if it's accurate, you can't, post it real time. And my ability to cross-reference, different pieces of information that I'm getting from formal channels enables me to provide real-time accurate information. And then the second half of my mission is to help our team get out of bed in the morning, give them some people some good news, some inspirational videos, some just, optimistic views on the war, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what I've been doing.
Okay, great. So that led to my next question. You said our team, so I was going to ask you, do you have a team of content curators, or is it?
I meant our team as in pro-Israel.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So it's an interesting question, though, because for the last 15 years, I was allergic to delegating. I could not build a team, because everything that I do is based on my relationships. And so for all the years, everybody's like, you got to build a team, got to build a team. I was like, I can't do that. But over the last year or two, I've learned that skill, and it's a skill. So first I hired an assistant who helps me a lot with my communication. I don't like the word assistant. She's a colleague. She's amazing. And then during the war, the beginning of the war, I don't remember how many months ago, but I hired a second employee, a guy named Yuval, who is absolute rock star and basically supports all my efforts, whether it's giving me, preparing me graphics for posts of mine, whether it's shortening text so that it can fit on different platforms, just literally, building the media kit, just the best thing I ever did. Honestly, both of them, it's the best thing I ever did. And it took a long time, but better late than never. And they've completely transformed my business.
Okay, so what I'm understanding is prior to October 7th, you were not doing, I mean, maybe you were doing activism in your own way, but certainly not at the scale now, or were you doing it to a certain degree and then you just amplified it?
Good question. So I would say that pre-October 7th, I was doing activism that was disguised as tech, meaning I was promoting tech, but in reality, the underlying goal was to promote Israel. But it wasn't straight up activism, meaning anybody who followed me could absolutely be anti-Israel and still follow me because it was about tech. I would say that October 7th, I just removed that mask and I just went straight up into activism.
Amazing. One thing that I've noticed about your content, which definitely you should follow him on Instagram and YouTube and wherever else, and we'll have links below, is you definitely are achieving this mission of real-time information. I wake up in the morning and I go to you and you have it first before everyone, possibly because you're 10 hours ahead of us over here. How are you able to curate and cultivate that information so quickly?
It's funny, years ago, a friend just said, I want to shadow you for a bit. I want to just kind of see how you work. And he said, watching me interact with my phone. First of all, I'm 100% mobile. I don't use computers at all. I'm on a computer right now. So that's why I asked you for doing audio or video. Because if it had been audio, I would have used my phone. So I really only turn on my MacBook when I have to do Zooms like this. I just got a new iPad Pro, which is super awesome. But the bottom line is I'm mobile. And so this person was like, I want to shadow you. And he watched how I interact with my phone. He was like, holy crap, dude, I'm getting dizzy. Yeah, I don't mean to whatever, but like it's kind of superhuman the way I interact with my phone. I'm being honest with you. Like I type way faster on my phone than I do on a computer, and I'm on it. I'm on it, and which is, by the way, it comes at a price. Don't get me wrong. I'm on it, and so I'm getting information from formal channels, from the IDF spokesperson, from the Knesset, from other channels, from the IDF, whatever it is. And so when I get a piece of information, I'm able to say, okay, here's the information. This other channel is providing me the same information. So I'm able to cross-reference and say, okay, the chances that this is inaccurate after all, the chances are very low. And on the flip side, when easiest case study is the beginning of the war when there was that hospital bombing. And I knew about this bombing well before anyone else did, well before the news knew about it. And the IDF told me at the highest levels of the IDF, this was not us. It was not us. And so I tweeted and I said, heads up, you're going to be hearing about a hospital bombing and you're going to be told it was Israel. It was not Israel. That tweet got millions of impressions. I don't know, 4 or 5 million impressions, whatever it is. And 45 minutes later, the propaganda machine kicked in and everyone's like, oh, Israel. And these millions of people knew not to believe that crap, right? So that's really the case study. And so, yeah, I mean, it's definitely not easy to be on it full time and in real time, but I am very proud. There's several things about this war that I'm very proud of. The 1.1 billion impressions is nice. It's, if I'm being totally whatever, it's a vanity metric, big deal, who cares? But I'm very, very proud of the fact, two things that I'm very proud of. First of all, I'm proud of the fact that since October 7th, with my tens of thousands of posts across all my social channels, I think there have been 2, maybe 3 instances where I tweeted something that ended up not being accurate, which is insane because, again, I'm tweeting in real time. You would have thought like there would have been 100 instances like that. So I'm very proud of my process that I'm able to verify that things are accurate. Mm-hmm. And even more, the thing I'm more proud of, and this is really supernatural, and I'm going to toot my own horn here for a second, is that I have not lost it once. I have not lost it once on social media, which,
you mean, how would you describe losing it on social media? Because there's a lot.
I'll tell you. So if anyone goes into any of my tweets, literally choose any tweet, like blindfold yourself and just randomly choose a tweet and go look at the replies, you'll get nauseous. You'll get physically ill, right? And people write me the sickest stuff. When I say sickest stuff, I don't mean Free Palestine. I mean sick stuff. Like, how do you kiss your mother with that mouth, right? And so people come at me, and I'm talking hundreds a day. And the temptation to respond is real, right? And there have been instances where I wrote the tweet and I just like, don't do it, and I just deleted it. But I have not once gone at someone on Twitter or any platform that came at me with profanity and name calling, and my family, my late brother, they come at me with all their tools, and I've not lost it once. I've not engaged with these psychopaths even once, which, again, I'm sure you can understand the satisfaction, right? Like, I want to answer him. I want to go back at him, but I haven't. And I'm really proud of that.
Kol hakavod. It takes a lot of strength and humility to not engage. And it really doesn't do anything. It's not going to change their mind, right? So it's like, right. Really, it's just expressing of energy. Okay, so I love it. I have so many questions based on what you just said, but I'm going to stick to some of the questions I had before we got here. So one of the things that I've been discussing with a lot of people, last night I was leading a meditation, and we talked about, we had this golden era of Judaism, which you can tell me if you agree with this or not, from, let's say, the founding of the State of Israel until October 7th, in my opinion, in America and in Israel to a greater or lesser degree. Would you agree with that? And would you agree with we're now kind of back to business as usual for the Jewish people?
I would agree about outside of Israel. I absolutely do not agree in Israel. Outside of Israel, I think, anybody who's, listen, if anyone is surprised by what's going on right now, then they haven't been paying attention. Like, open a history book, dude. Come on. Like, we knew what was going to happen. It happens in every generation. In every single generation, it's the same script over and over and over again. And when I say the same script, I don't only mean the anti-Semitism. I mean how we react to anti-Semitism, aka assimilation. Oh, don't hate us. We're just like you, Greeks and Romans and Nazis and Soviets. We're just like you. Don't come at us. It doesn't work. Like, it just doesn't work, right? And that's what we think we're doing now. We're the most liberal people in America, the Jews. Like, stop it. Stop voting Dems. Stop, like, you're nuts. People hate you. Enough already, And so, yeah, the golden era for the Jewish people around the world is absolutely over. I think we've gone through a transition that is so fundamental, and I don't think many people realize that. And that is, we've transitioned in a day from a world in which anti-Semitism was always there, but it was under the surface and it was considered taboo and it was just wrong. Like, it was wrong. And so they had to play the charade of, oh, it's not anti-Semitism, it's just anti-Zionism. And now we're in a world where not only is anti-Semitism legitimate, it's actually trendy and cool. And so this is a fundamental shift. I don't think most people realize it. So yeah, the golden era is over. I honestly, the only thing that surprises me is that it took this long. But in Israel, are you kidding me? We're just getting started, man. This country's a freaking splitting of the sea every single day.
I love it, and I agree with you. And you said some pretty strong comments recently. I'm trying to keep up pace with your content, but there's a lot of it that comes out. So recently, in the last few days, you talked about how America is not safe for Jews anymore. And I was just doing, I'm in California. There's 1.2 million approximately Jews that live here. Talk about that. What are your feelings about that? And what's your evidence and what do you think's coming?
So I have to ask you a question before I answer that question. Am I allowed to take off the gloves?
Of course. Yeah, this
You
show
sure?
is a glove-free show.
Are you sure?
Of course. Please.
All right. I'll tell you something. I'll tell you something. We are a really stupid nation. Like, we're a really dumb nation. We are so dumb. In every generation, it's the same freaking thing. Dude, like 10 plagues. I mean, literally bending nature for us. God's like, let me just get out of this Egypt thing, get out of here. And we're like, you know what? I think we'll stay. 80% of the Israelites stayed. 80%. People, it's unbelievable. Like, what? After every 210 years of backbreaking slavery, 10 plagues, God's like, literally, get out of here. No, we'll stay. What are you, nuts? Right? The splitting of the sea. We get to the sea after everything God did for us, and we're yelling at him like he's going to kill us. Like, he's going to let us die here. Like, dude, wake up. God's performing incredible miracles before your eyes, and you're just not paying attention. It's the famous story. I'm sure you know the story. There's a storm, and a guy gets on a roof, and everyone's being saved, and he's like, I'm going to stay here. And they're like, dude, get in the boat. And he's like, no, God's going to save me. They're like, dude, just get in the boat. God's going to save me. Helicopter comes, get on the helicopter. Nah, God's going to save me. And the guy drowns, and he goes with the guy, and he's like, God, what the heck, man? I believed in you. He goes, what do you want from me? I sent you a boat and a helicopter. You didn't get on, right? We are experiencing unbelievable miracles in this war. And the bottom line is, again, the script is already written. We know what's going to happen. Again, on the one hand, it's shocking to me how long it took. On the other hand, it's shocking to me that it happened to me in my lifetime. But America's done, man. It's done. Like, the empire's done. Is it going to take a year or a decade? I don't know, but it's the end. The Western civilization as we know it is done. You can't ignore what's going on in the UK or in Montreal or many other. It's Sharia law, dude. That's it. It's East versus West, and they seem to be winning. And if you look at the script throughout history, what happens? This is the script. I'm telling you right now. This is what happens. There's an empire, and it grows in influence, and it continues to grow until it reaches complete world dominance. And the first thing that it does is throws morality out the window, aka putting people to fight to their death in the Colosseum, or forgetting about the fact that we have gender, which is the most fundamental principle of nature, because we don't care about morality anymore. And as soon as we don't care about morality, this empire says we don't want the old school morality anymore. And so they can't come after the creator of morality, aka God. So what do? They come after the messenger of morality, aka the Jews. You kill FedEx, you don't get your package. They come after us. They think, and we are like, no, don't hate us, man. We're just like, we're more Greek than you Greeks. We're more liberal than the most. And they're like, you're not just like us. We have this tool called anti-Semitism, and we're going to show you that you're not just like us. And then it hits the fan. What happens next is the fall of the empire. In every single empire, just open a history book. And so morality's gone out the window, anti-Semitism spiked, and the next step is the fall of the empire, and it's going to happen. Again, I don't know if it's going to be in a month, a year, or a decade. It won't be a decade, but it's happening. And I can only ask one question, and you'll forgive me. Maybe this is a little bit harsh and aggressive or not politically correct, but you're going to have to get over it, my friend. My question is as follows, right? This is what I ask my American friends all day, all the time. I ask them this question. If I put a gun to your head, like a physical gun, and I said, listen, if you're not on an El Al plane in 1 hour from now, I am pulling this trigger on you and your entire family. Presumably, any normal person would be on a plane, which means that in your mind, and when I say you, I don't mean you personally, in your mind, you do not think that what's going on today constitutes a gun, because otherwise you'd be on a plane. So if what's going on today does not constitute a gun, my question is, what does, right? Unless the answer is nothing, meaning I grew up asking myself, how could it be that the German Jews didn't get out when they started to legislate Nuremberg laws? Like, it's one thing when Hitler has dangerous rhetoric. It's another thing when they're legislating against Jews. What were they thinking, right? And my whole life I struggled with that. And now I'm like, I don't struggle with that anymore, because what has to happen? I mean, you got anti-Semites in Congress. You got people being beaten in the streets half to death, people being murdered because they're Jews. You got Kyrie Irving, you got Kanye West, you got the Squad. What has to happen? Is there anything that you as an American Jew, and again, I'm not talking to you personally, is there anything that if this thing happens, you're like, I'm getting the hell out of here right, on a plane, not in a year, not in a 5-year plan, not in an hour. I need to get the hell out of here right now. Now, disclaimer, I fully recognize that that's a completely ridiculous statement. No one's getting on a plane in an hour. You have a whole life that you built there. It's not so easy. And I also recognize that my parents brought me here when I was 15. I'm a big talker. That being said, everyone should ask themselves that question. Is there any event? Like what has to happen? I mean, it's all happened. It's all happened. And I'll tell you, not only is it all happened, but the transition from dangerous rhetoric to actual extermination against Jews or extermination of Jews took years in Germany. Here it took a day. Like October 8th, they were out to play. So what's going to look like in 6 months from now? Like if anybody thinks, oh yeah, the anti-Semitism is going to go back in the bag, the genie's out of the bottle, dude. It's not going back. That's it. It's going to get worse and worse and worse, and it's going to get exponentially worse, and it's going to get a lot worse very fast. So people need to wake up. And again, the German Jews didn't wake up, and we look back like, why didn't you read the writing on the wall? Well, the answer is, why the hell are you not reading the writing on the wall? What has to happen? So I'm very, very worried about Jewry outside of Israel. I just came from Montreal last week. It is absolutely sickening. And I don't know any other word to, you cannot walk 5 minutes without seeing Palestinian flags. You cannot order an Uber because every Uber tells you that the streets are all blocked to Palestinians. It is not livable. If you are a Jew in Montreal, you are living in constant threat. And I'm saying Montreal, I'm singling them out, but the same is true for the UK. And unfortunately, the same is true for many cities in the United States. The state of California ain't not in such good shape, but it's spreading like a freaking cancer, and it's not slowing down, and it's terrifying.
Okay, so let's say there's approximately 8 million, maybe 9 million Jews outside of Israel. Everyone decides to come. Is there room? We're gonna fit them in?
100%. 100%. You're asking. I'll tell you. You're asking a question. You're asking a fair, legitimate question. I think at some point, at a personal level, at some point, I reach every day. By the way, this happens. Or I reach a point. I'm like, okay, now I need to let go, and I need to remember what's on my head. Right. I'm a religious, observant Jew. I have faith. Okay. Yeah. And if you count the square meters of the state of Israel and you map each Jew to it, then there's a problem. But I know that God wants us to be here. God tells us He wants us to be here. Will fit. I mean, I don't mean to sound like a voodoo kind of Jew, but every 3 times a year, the Jews went up to the temple and somehow they all prayed in the temple. How'd that happen? Because it was a miracle. It expanded. And I'm not saying we depend on miracles, but the answer is, this is what we're supposed to do. To ask that question, which is a legitimate question, I don't mean to belittle it, is the equivalent to saying, really, is there going to be enough kosher food if we all keep kosher? Dude, God wants you to keep kosher, keep kosher. Stop with your calculations to try to justify the fact that you're not coming to Israel. God wants us here. God wants us to keep kosher. God wants us to keep Shabbos. That's our role here. Our role is not to do calculations. So yeah, the answer is, if every Jew comes to Israel, the Jewish people will instantly become infinitely more powerful and more unified.
Uh-huh. Okay. So on to more good news. You'd mentioned some things about, I think you used the word, and correct me if I'm wrong here, sort of the infestation of radical Islam in our country here in America. Talk about that a little bit.
Listen, I mean, this isn't a new thing. I mean, there's the book, I don't remember Thomas Fried, I don't remember the author, The Clash of Civilizations. I learned it in my political science degree 20 years ago. We knew this was going to happen. I mean, the funny thing is, it's so ironic, right? We're just take the Palestinians as an example, right? The same people who are they deserve a state and they deserve independence are the same people who say, don't take them seriously when they say they want to murder you. Come on, don't hold them accountable. So wait, are they little kids throwing a tantrum, or are they people that deserve a state? Make up your mind. You can't be both, right? And so when radical Islam states clearly, they're not even embarrassed to say it, they want to take over the world. They want every infidel dead. This isn't I can't hear it. They're being subtle about it. They're not being subtle about it, except the Western world is no, they don't mean it. Would you stop with that already? They mean it. They've shown that they mean it endless time. So, their mission statement is clear, could not be any clearer, and they're implementing it. They're executing on it. And we're just sitting with our fingers in our ears being la, 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 la. It's happening, dude. Open your eyes. And so, if we continue like this, then we will lose this war and we will lose Western civilization. And again, I historically and maybe theologically, I believe that that's inevitable. But they are. I don't know. Infestation is a very offensive way to say it. I wouldn't know if I don't know if I'd use that word, but they are taking over our countries. They say it. They want every one of these countries to be ruled by Sharia law. This isn't a secret. The only people that don't want to accept this are the Western people who look at them and they say they don't mean it. Would you stop with that already?
Yeah, believe them when they say, right?
Yeah.
I would agree with that. Okay, so this morning, this is a breaking news, which happened, you already know about this, but for people that don't, I believe it's Spain, Norway, and Ireland sort of recognizing the right of a Palestinian state. What does that actually mean? Does that actually have any weight? And what are your thoughts about that?
Listen, these are all manifestations of anti-Semitism, period. Like, I know they say, oh, pulling the anti-Semitism card. Sorry, like, get over it. It's a real thing. Like, and so it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything, nor does the decision of the ICC, to issue warrants of arrest for Netanyahu and like, it's all ridiculous. But it's not that specific thing that should worry us, because again, they're meaningless. It's a trend. It's where this world is going. And so this is just yet another step in the proliferation of anti-Semitism in our world. I don't know how political you want to get, but the whole narrative, just the very word Palestinian, let alone if Palestine ever existed, let alone occupation and all the BS garbage that people like, open a history book. Come on. You think you occupied an Arab Palestinian state? When? When was it established? What was the freaking national anthem? Would you stop with the lies already? The word Palestinian meant Jew, okay? I have friends whose grandparents have a birth certificate from Palestine, and they're Jews. So, like, Yasser Arafat, an arch terrorist who murdered hundreds, maybe thousands of people, hijacked that term, and we all buy that narrative. And we need to stop using these words because words matter. And we need to stop calling it Palestinian. We need to call them Arabs what they are, call them Judaians, call them whatever you want. And we need to stop calling it the West Bank. It's called Judea and Samaria. And it's clear as day why the world doesn't want to call it Judea and Samaria, because the word Judea sounds awfully like another word, Jew. And it's clear when you call it Judea and Samaria where the Jews came from Judea. So like, oh, it's called the West Bank. We need to stop using those words. We're perpetuating lies. It's all lies, it's fabrication. So this decision to recognize a Palestinian state means nothing. It's ridiculous, but it's their way of expressing their anti-Semitism.
I got it. Okay, so also I had the interesting fortune of being on UC Berkeley campus for the last 9 months, and I got to interview the professor, Dr. Ron Hassner, he had a little sit-in. He's been there for 20 years, and his philosophy, which I agree with, was these protesters, they say they're pro-Palestinian, but they're actually not. They're anti-Israeli. That's really what it is. And I think that could be said for all of the quote-unquote protests, encampments, etc. on college campuses. What are your thoughts about that?
I strongly, fundamentally disagree with what you just said. They are not anti-Israel. They are anti-Jewish.
I guess by anti-Israel, I was including that in there.
But anyway, the bottom line is these people are not anti-Israel. They don't. You couldn't point to Israel on a map. They don't know anything about Israel. They don't know what river, what sea they're talking about. They know nothing. They know that they hate Jews. And so they disguise it in the beginning with a little, ooh, we're anti-Israel. They're not anti-Israel. We see the anti-Semitism as clear as day. In fact, the very call from the river to the sea is literally, not figuratively, literally a call for genocide. So after Hamas did on October 7th, if any person not only doesn't stand with Hamas, but if anybody doesn't stand with Israel, that is a person that has lost their moral compass, and a person who, as far as I'm concerned, is a flaming anti-Semite. If you can not stand with Israel after Hamas came in, invaded us unprovoked, and did what they did, and I'm not going to repeat what they did because everyone knows what they did. If you don't stand with Israel after that act, then you are a Jew hater. Period. Full stop. Mm-hmm. So I'm taking off the gloves, brother. I told you.
No, it's great. I think it's great. I think people need to hear it raw and unfiltered. And I think, one of the tragedies of Western culture that my Israeli friends don't have this problem is we're just walking on eggshells a lot of the time. Well, I don't want to say this, and it's
Yep.
like this. That's why I wanted to have a forum like this, so we could A, have long, deep conversations, B, just really like just tell it like it is, right?
If we're gonna throw a PC out the window, can I go in hard on that?
Yo,
all right, I'm gonna say something right now that, being that you're in California, you're probably not gonna like it, but I'm gonna stand my ground on this one. We're not gonna get into the issue, but I just want to say one thing. When for the past X amount of years, with the whole trans movement and the pronouns, right? And they would say to you, like, dude, you don't have to agree with me, but just call me by my pronoun. What do you care? It doesn't cost you anything, right? That was their claim. So let's analyze that. Let's dissect that for 1 second. If I'm looking at a human being, let's say a man, and that man tells me, call me a cat, and society's saying you have to call him a cat. So is there a price? Well, their claim is there's no price. Just call me a cat. Well, let's talk about that for 1 second, because if you're telling me that I'm looking at a man, but you're telling me it's a cat, what you're in essence telling me is, do not believe what your eyes see. Do not use critical thinking, which when it comes to pronouns, big deal. But when it comes to a war between good and evil, and you were told for the past 5 years to not use your critical thinking, now all of a sudden you can't differentiate between what's good and what's evil. So there's a freaking big price. What you're doing is you're throwing out morality. You are creating a society of moral bankruptcy when you tell someone that they're looking at a man, but they need to be called a dog. It's ridiculous. And it is the deterioration and the disintegration of morality in Western society.
Also, the point that you made, this whole idea of, people throw around the word smart and intelligent a lot, and yet you have all this insanity at all these, we call them poison Ivy League schools these days, or whatever, UC schools, etc. And I saw it firsthand, both inside of the classroom, how anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, anti-Israel rhetoric is taught, and outside on the campus itself. What are your thoughts about that in terms of, well, I have two questions. One thing I think that we all realized was we've been losing a media war for the last 25 years, possibly 50 years, that we haven't even been fighting because we've been more concerned about building up our own people and creating things like tech and creating our own culture, right? So that's A. And then B is, all these years of indoctrination in college systems right here in this country. Like, how is it possible to turn the tide over time? And what do you say to people that have kids that are going to go to school here in colleges in America?
So first of all, I want to make an important point. A lot of people say, and I've said it even on this interview, I've said it many times, that, the anti-Zionism thing, anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism is like a nice, mask. It's a charade, but in reality, when you're anti-Zionist, you're anti-Jewish. And I want to correct myself and say that it's not that you're using anti-Zionism as an excuse. And Zionism, and this needs to be said, like yelled from every, Zionism is as core to Judaism as Jesus is to Christianity or Mecca is to Islam. You cannot differentiate and separate Zion from Judaism, okay? Anybody who's spent 12 seconds in a synagogue sees the word Zion thousands of times mentioned in our prayers and in the Torah. It's absurd to even try to separate those two things. They are core to each other. They're not, there's Zionism, there's Judaism. Zionism is Judaism by definition. That's number one. That's a really important point. As far as, the indoctrination, I think you're asking the wrong question, right? You're asking, like, can we go back? No, that's not the right question. I don't think, even if somehow you had a magic wand and I could say to you, all right, spend 100 hours doing A, B, C, D, F, G, and boom, the tide will turn. Those 100 hours could have been spent doing something much more productive. So I don't think that that's the best use of our resources. I think those people are indoctrinated and ideologically lost, and I write them off. I wrote them off a long time ago. I as a human being and as a Jew, need to worry about the Jewish people. And so I think the time and resources you would spend on trying to, quote unquote, convert those people back or pulling them back is better spent taking care of the Jewish people and our future. So I'm not even going to answer the question because I don't think the question is legs. That's number one.
The idea was not to turn the tide back, but okay, so we lost. Oh, the media war, that was part of it, part A.
Oh, that was it. Yeah, the media war. That was it. That was it.
Right.
So
Going
let me address
forward,
that.
yeah, you can't rewind, obviously, but like moving
Right.
forward.
Right. So the media war is a very, very important discussion. Yeah, there's no question that we're losing that war. And, I will say in our defense, we're getting better, but we are losing the war. But I think we're losing the war not because of the reason that anyone thinks we're losing the war. We're losing the war for a completely different reason. The reason most people think we're losing the war is because they outnumber us 1,000 to 1, which is true. That is absolutely not the reason we're losing the war. The reason we're losing the war is because their narrative could not possibly be more digestible. You are oppressing us, free Palestine. That's it. Like, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. You can be a 2-year-old kid or a 95-year-old grandmother, and you get that. It's as simple and easy to digest as possible. What is our narrative? Go look at any Jewish influencer online. What are they talking about? Oh my God, the world hates us. Great. So you're yelling at the world that hates you about how much they hate you. Well, how is that in any way effective? Oh, there's a double standard. Look at the New York Times. They're horrible title. Great. So what? What's the point? That's what you're spending your time and resources doing. What are you doing? What is our narrative? So not only do we not have a narrative, but whatever we do have is completely fragmented. Everyone's saying their own thing. We have no unified narrative. Now, what's the solution? The solution is clear as day. We should have a narrative, and the narrative should be one word: light. Light. The Jewish people have been nothing but a source of light in this world. We are in a very dark world right now, whether it's Nobel Prizes, whether it's cancer research, whether it's, rescue missions, whether there's natural disasters, whatever you want to look at, the Jewish people have been nothing but a source of light in this world. But we're afraid, oh no, don't call us chosen people because that might offend people. It's time we owned it. We are the shit. We are the shit. Like, the Jewish people need to get up and say, we are the shit. Okay? And I'm sorry, I don't curse almost ever. I challenge you to find one tweet of mine with profanity. Never. But I'm telling you, the Jewish people have been supernatural in the contribution we've made to Western civilization. It is completely disproportionate to the fact we're 0.2% of the population. And so it's time we stop shying away from that, because somebody might say, oh no, they think they're better than us. Okay. Are we better than you because of our DNA? No, we're better than you because we value education and family, and we have the values that create a better society and bring that many Nobel Prizes. So if you don't like it, go educate your kids like we do. Go focus on community like we do, okay? But the reality is the Jewish people are an unbelievable nation, and we see that more now than ever before. And so, the bottom line is we're only losing the war because we are not telling the right story. We need to own how amazing we are, and we need to stop being embarrassed and shy away from who we are and what we are.
Right. And if you, it's kind of funny if you think about, the libel that Jews control the media, and yet we can't even get our stuff together in our
Right.
media campaign. Look, how
Right.
about this? An indigenous peoples back to the land movement. That's something that I'm trying to push out in the Western world, certainly on college campuses, because that tends to land a little bit better. And also bringing light, you could, bring to light the fact that, what is it, 25% of all Nobel Peace Prizes were Jews. So I think it's great.
Uh,
Um,
I want to tell you something. My 13-year-old kid told me this morning. I don't know if you saw the post I wrote about this morning, but I was driving him to school this morning, and we were talking about, he's very into geopolitics and the situation. We were talking, and he's like, we think as Jews, like, if we're weak, right? If we're like, oh, we're just like you. Oh, look, we sent in so much humanitarian aid. How come you hate us? Like, if we think that that's what's going to appease our enemies, we're a bunch of it. My 13-year-old kid said this to me. We're a bunch of idiots. But you know what? I don't even want forget philosophy, forget theology, forget history. Dude, we in our prayers many times a day say a verse from the Torah that every Jew who's ever prayed in a synagogue knows, and the verse is as follows: Hashem oz lamo yitain, God will give his people strength. Hashem yivarech etamo b'shalom, God will bless his people with peace. That seems like a strange thing. What does strength have to do with peace? That's exactly the point. Peace is achieved not through weakness. Peace is achieved through strength. In fact, I'm going to say something super not PC right now. And I've never said this before publicly, but I was thinking about this morning, and I'm like, this is exactly the type of thing that we are afraid to say, but it's time we owned it. Many people, don't know the story of Pinchas, right? Pinchas was the high priest, and he encountered two people behaving.
Cosby.
Right. He encountered two people behaving extremely immorally in a public space, and he single-handedly, independently, without asking, he took a spear and he murdered them both. That seems like a pretty extreme thing to say. Like, this guy, he's an extremist, right? So, you would expect the Torah to continue, and maybe God would condemn him. Maybe God would say, listen, I appreciate that you kind of had my back and you got rid of these people who are doing immoral things, but like, maybe next time take it down a notch. Like, but how does God reward Pinchas? It's a fascinating thing. How does God reward Pinchas? Brit shalom. He gives him peace. He murdered two people, and that's how you get peace? Yeah, damn straight. You obliterate evil in this world, you achieve peace. And the whole concept of we need to appease our enemies in order to achieve peace has been disproven time and time again. And yet we are so blind. Open your eyes. Our enemies smell weakness. When we're weak, that's when they attack. When we're strong, we stand our ground. That's when we achieve actual victory. So it's time. Again, we need to stop the weak Jew with the trembling knees. It's enough already. It didn't work. It's not working, and it will never work. Own it. We are an amazing nation that has made an unprecedented and completely disproportionate contribution to Western civilization, and we need to stop being embarrassed to say it. That's it.
Oh, man. Mic drop. Okay, let's talk about Mashiach. Are we in the war of Gog versus Magog, in your opinion? And what do we need to do to hurry this thing up?
So, it's interesting. This past Shabbat, my 19-year-old kid who just drafted was in a Torah lesson, a Torah shir on Gog and Magog, on this I don't know what you want to call this concept, that there's going to be this massive war between before Mashiach comes. So, full disclaimer, I'm absolutely not an expert at all, far from it. So I don't necessarily have an educated response to that, but I will say one thing, and this is something that's going to sound a little bit cuckoo to you. I'm sure it will, but if you step back and think about it, you might realize there's some legitimacy to what I'm saying. In World War I, they didn't call it World War I, right? They didn't know they were in a world war till afterwards, right? Do you know how many countries are involved in this war? Like, if you count the countries that are involved in this war, whether it's militarily, financially, diplomatically, politically, there are tens, probably 30 countries in this world that are involved in this war in an active way. I'm not talking about like, oh, I don't like the Jews. No, actively. There are tens of countries involved in this war. We are in World War III right now. We don't know it yet. We'll know it in 20, 30, 50 years from now. We are in World War III right now. I fundamentally believe that. And so I don't know about the Gog and Magog thing, but I will say one thing. I mean, the story, but I'll just repeat it for your listeners. There's a very famous story in the Talmud where I believe 4 rabbis are walking by where the temple once stood, and they see a fox walking where the Holy of Holies once stood, and they start crying, right? And one of them, Rabbi Akiva, who's the youngest of the group, famously starts laughing. They're like, dude, what are you laughing about? He goes, what do you mean, what am I laughing about? What are you crying about? They're like, there's a freaking wild animal walking where our Holy of Holies once stood. This is desecration of God's name. He said, but that's why I'm laughing. They're like, what do you mean? He says, this was all written. We have these prophecies. It's seriously black on white. It says, Shualim Hilchubo, there will be foxes walking there. So if this came true, then the rest of the prophecies are coming true. And that's it. That's why I'm laughing. And so that's how I remind myself this every single day. Everything we're seeing today, with no exception, has been written before that it's going to happen, AKA the most obvious one, but this is only one of many, many. And I'm actually thinking of writing a post about this, just kind of curating all the prophecies that we're seeing coming true right now. But the Gemara, the Talmud says the times before Mashiach, the entire world will be upside down. Mm-hmm. Black will be white, white will be black, day will be night, night will be day. I mean, I can't imagine a world more upside down than our world right now, right? I mean, we're talking about a genocidal, savage, barbaric terrorist organization that, I'm sorry, I stay far away from the atrocities, but that microwave babies, right? I mean, and the world doesn't clearly understand who's right and who's wrong here. The world's upside down. Morality is backwards, okay? And so terrorists are freedom fighters, democracies are apartheids. Like we are living in an upside down world. And so, yeah, I strongly believe Mashiach is coming. That being said, I'm just going to be vulnerable with you on this. Part of me is like, but isn't that what they said in the Holocaust? It creates doubt for me. And I heard a story that really shook me to the core, where that they spoke to a Holocaust survivor, and they said, what was the hardest part for you in the Holocaust? And he said, the day of liberation. He said, what do you mean the day of liberation? That was the hardest part for you in the Holocaust? He said, yeah, because the Allies liberated me and not Mashiach. Meaning the whole time he's like, this is it. Mashiach's right here. There's no way Mashiach's not coming right now. And then the Allies come and liberate him instead of Mashiach. He's like, it broke his heart, right? So, I strongly feel and believe miracles are happening and Mashiach's around the corner. But then a part of me is like, dude, stop it. We had the Holocaust, Mashiach didn't come. So, we obviously as Jews it's part of our fundamental beliefs that Mashiach could come any day. And I do believe it, but who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, it's so interesting, in terms of seeing miracles in our days, the whole thing when Iran launched all those barrage of missiles. And I mean, that was Nahon, absolutely a miracle. I mean, I know you're a tech guy and we're talking about science and technology as well, but there are so many of those that have happened and continually happen on a daily basis. I think it's important to focus on that and to focus on the light as well.
But we being you and your listeners and any Jew in the world needs to understand is we don't see those miracles. We never see the miracles. We didn't see them in Egypt. We didn't see them in the desert. We never see the miracles. And dude, like, yeah, that Iran night, that was a miracle of unprecedented proportions, but let's not go so big. Dude, tens of thousands of rockets landing in empty spaces in Israel. Where are these empty spaces? Like, this country is the size of a freaking soccer ball. Where are these empty spaces? Like, these are open miracles. What the Iron Dome is, the clouds of glory in modern day. It's not even like, anybody who looks at the Iron Dome is like, oh, yeah, sure, the Iron Dome, a system that detonates rockets 96% precision in midair. Sure, that's normal. Well, if you think that, you clearly know nothing, because I personally interviewed Dr. Danny Gold, who invented the Iron Dome, and he said to me, no one, and I mean no one, thought it was possible. And here we are, right? So, yes, that Iran night was an unbelievable miracle, but we don't have to go that big. I mean, I'm going to go really dark on you for 1 second, dude. If I told you that 3,000 terrorists marched into a country smaller than New Jersey with 8 hours of free hand and unlimited access to automatic weapons, you would expect them to murder 150,000 people, not 1,200. Mm-hmm. Now, I couldn't utter the word miracle to describe October 7th. It was the most horrible and darkest day in our history since the Holocaust. We know that. But we also have to take a historical view on this and realize, wow, if God was not involved that day, and I don't know why God does what he does. I'm not saying that God, the question of where was he on October, I don't know. Okay. But I do know that if you have a brain in your head and you have logic and you look at that scenario and you can explain to me how they only, quote unquote, with air quotes, killed 1,200 people, please, I would like to understand your explanation. So the answer is, okay, they committed their atrocities. Now, would I use the word miracle to describe those horrible? Of course not. But we also have to look at this historically. And, again, I don't use the word miracle because it's a negative thing, but why is the world obsessed with this war? Like, why is it the only thing anyone's talking about? Is it because of the casualty numbers? Obviously not, right? I mean, even if you go with Hamas's ridiculously fabricated numbers and multiply them by 5, it doesn't even come close to what happens in Syria and other genocides around the world. And when I say other genocides, I mean real genocides. So why is the world obsessed, right? The world's obsessed because this is the script. It doesn't make any sense. This is all supernatural. This is all bigger than you and I. And we need to understand that. And we need to stop looking at this war through a human lens, because we will lose our minds. It doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
If I told you, dude, 3 weeks ago, okay, that the foreign minister and the president of Iran would die in a helicopter crash in the middle of everything that's going on right now, like, why would they go into a storm with winds of hundreds of kilometers in a chopper that's 40 years old that they bought from America when Iran and America were allies. Like, that makes no sense. So yeah, okay, it was a helicopter crash, but why was he in that helicopter? Why did that storm? These are all God's hands. It's so obvious. You just have to see it.
100%. So last two questions, and I appreciate you spending time with us. I know that you're super busy. Okay, first question is, what is your vision for what needs to happen next in Israel?
I mean, I think it's time. We have to stop with the appeasement already. I think we have to do what we need to do. And war is tragic, and innocents die in war. And nobody in their right mind would have, come at the Allies for attacking Germany, despite the fact that millions of quote unquote innocent Germans were killed in World War II. The Palestinian people, I should say again, the Arab people who call themselves Palestinians, voted for Hamas as a people. That's it. We see the polls, 90% support October 7th. So, yeah, there are innocent people that are going to die. Of course, is that a tragedy? It is. But we didn't want this war. They forced it upon us, and now they're paying the price, and they need to pay the price. We need to stop. We need to stop with the silk gloves or whatever. Enough already. We need to do what we need to do. Stop with the humanitarian aid. Stop putting our kids and our brothers and sisters in danger on foot into Gaza. Do what needs to be done. I'm not, God forbid, calling for carpet bombing of Gaza. Of course not. We need to do what we use, precision missiles, F-16, F-35s. Do what we need to do. Use our tools, but we need to stop putting their lives on top of our lives. It's insanity. It's true insanity. And what do we think? Like idiots. We're like, oh yeah, if only we do this, the world's going to love us. The world's going to hate us no matter what. We need to do what we need to do. And so we need to end this war, period. We need to win this war at all costs, by any means necessary. Sadly, and this is a frustration that I have, whoever defined the objectives of this war was clearly smoking something, because the two objectives of the war are mutually exclusive. You cannot defeat Hamas and get rid of every Hamas terrorist and get our hostages back. It's one or the other. If you're getting our hostages back, you have to negotiate with Hamas. And if you're obliterating Hamas, hostages are dead. So it's a sad reality. It's a horrible, tragic, but we need to do what we need to do. And again, it's so hard for me to say the following sentence. It breaks my heart. But unfortunately, we as a country need to defeat Hamas. We need to defeat Hamas. We have to do whatever we can to bring back those hostages, dead or alive. But again, it's an impossible sentence to say, but unfortunately, tragically, the existence and the survival of the state of Israel depends on obliterating Hamas, and it does not depend on returning the hostages. So we need to do what's right for the state of Israel and for our existence, and that is to get rid of Hamas forever. And again, use all our resources to bring back those hostages. But unfortunately, that needs to take the back seat.
Okay, and so I know you can get rid of the actual troops of Hamas, but the ideology, it's anti-Semitism. So the ideology won't go away, but you can actually dismantle their military.
Yeah, you get them off my border, though. I don't want them on my border.
I gotcha. Okay, and my last question, and I always ask everyone on the Holy Sparks podcast this question: what does the Jewish world need now most, and why?
So I heard something really unbelievable well before the war. As you know, every year on Tisha B'Av, which is the saddest day on the Jewish calendar, everyone starts talking about baseless hatred, right? Because the second temple was destroyed because of baseless hatred. And it's like, we got to stop hating each other. We got to stop. We start unifying. And, that's why the temple was destroyed. Great. And of course, baseless hatred is horrible. But let's not forget that only one of the temples was destroyed because of baseless hatred. The other temple was destroyed because of the three sins, which are idolatry, murder, and what's the third one? Indecent relationships, whatever you want to call it, right? So I heard from a rabbi in Ra'anana, an unbelievable thought. He said, people think today we are, guilty of this baseless hatred thing. No, we're actually guilty of the other three sins. Why? He says, think about Western culture, right? What do we have? We have the concept of cancel culture. When you cancel someone, you are murdering their essence. Like a person's name is everything, right? When you cancel someone, you murder their essence, right? So that's murder, right? Then we have wokeism. Wokeism has become the new idolatry. Like, let's just say it as it is. Wokeism and, the craziness that we're seeing in liberal society in America has become the new idol, right? And we worship it like an idol. And then we have a cancel thing. And then we have, again, please forgive me, I don't hate, anyone, whether they're trans, whether they're LGBTQ. I don't have any hatred in my heart, but this is a disintegration of something that should have been the most sacred thing in the world, right? And so those three things of indecent relationships, whatever you want to call it, murder and idolatry, that's what we're seeing in modern society. We need to stop that, right? And so you're asking what the Jewish people need. The Jewish people need to unify right now. We need to stop with the internal
insanity. And we need to realize that you could take a person with 85 piercings and 400 tattoos in Tel Aviv and a Haredi guy, an ultra-Orthodox rabbi in Mea Shearim, and if you put them in a room, they will have more things in common, a lot more things in common than they have different, right? 90% of things they'll have in common, 10% they'll have different. And we need to focus on that 90%, not on the 10%. We spend our entire lives talking about the 10%. We need unity. We need to strengthen, ourselves, because the essence of the Jewish people don't realize this. What makes us strong is that unity. Just think about this one thing. When the Jewish people became the Jewish people at Mount Sinai, we got the Torah. What is the first thing? The first adjective, the first description the Torah gives of the Jewish people. They stood and they parked by the mountain. What does the commentary say? With one man with one heart. Our unity is our strength. And when we're not unified, our enemies smell our weakness. So we need to focus on our values. We need to stop letting Western values penetrate our souls, because it is destroying us from within. And we need to unify over those values, our positive values, and what made us the Jewish people, what makes us, such an amazing nation. Focus on that, focus on unity, strengthen from within, win this war, and build, the next state of Israel 2.0.
Amen. Well, Hillel, I want to end with a blessing. First of all, thank you for your time. I know you're very busy, and Hashem should bless you with continued access to great information and resources that you can share with our people and beyond, to strengthen them and to get more truth out there in a world of mistruths, in a world of lies, and in a world of questionable conscience. You can provide a voice of reason and a voice of information, and you should be blessed with enough energy to not only chase after your 5 kids, but to really push the narrative forward that is the narrative of our people bringing light into this world. And it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. It's great to do this. It's very enjoyable. I loved it. Thanks.